r/ask Reddit. Which is the worst single decision in history ever made by a person? Alan Savory, the ecologist who killed 40,000 elephants because it was believed that grazing was causing the desertification of Africa, only to find out later that elephants were essential to prevent desertification. In a thread filled with all sorts of villains and dumb ducks, this is the one dude who's making me disproportionately mad. You'd be happy to know that he learned from his mistake and went on to create an elephant sanctuary, if I recall correctly. He's a leader in the regenerative agriculture movement now, working to educate people about the necessity of ruminants for healthy grasslands. Alright gentlemen, we've successfully fended off the Greeks for 10 years. Our great city of Troy still stands. If we keep this up, surely they will realize the siege is fruitless and return home before long. Yo captain, there's this big ass wooden horse outside. Oh rad, bring it in. In the beginning the universe was created. This has made a lot of people very angry and been widely regarded as a bad move. The Donner Party of 90 pioneers choosing to take a shortcut when heading west from Illinois to California in 1846. Said shortcut led to them getting trapped in the Sierra Nevada mountains and resorting to cannibalism. The Donner Party stupidity chose to take a shortcut that was sold to them by a con man over the strenuous objections of serious and thoughtful pioneer guides. History repeats itself. Yup, he tricked them into blazing the trail. And by blazing the trail, I mean spending 2 weeks to move a few miles because you have to cut down every tree in your way. This error was compounded by an even more foolish decision. The Donner Party shot at Native Americans trying to bring them a deer to eat after the Native Americans saw the party starving to death. The decision by the Scottish to invade England during Black Death must be up there. Mao Zedong's revolutionary campaign, the Great Leap Forward, resulting in millions of people starving to death. How did they not realize moving all the people who grow the food into factories would result in famine? Interestingly, one of the other contributing factors was the state encouraging people to kill sparrows. Sparrows were regarded as a pest and it was thought that they were eating the seeds of crops. Thus farmers were encouraged to kill them. In actual fact, sparrows ate insects and helped keep the insect population down. Without the sparrows, the insects were left unchecked and allowed to feast on the crops, ruining them. Not the worst in the world, but apparently my family owned a little town west of Kent, UK. My great-great-great-grandfather got plastered one night and gambled it all away. Alcibiades was considered a traitor in Athens for leading his men to death. A traitor in Sparta because he got the queen to cheat on the king with him, and a traitor in Persia after including them in a war. Edit. So I did a little bit of info, and the switching sides and stealing statues dongs are also true, plus he is a bisexual. Not like there is anything wrong with bisexuality. Yeah, but he got away with it and had fun. And in the end, that's all that really matters. Maybe the real worst single decision in history ever made by a person was the friends we made along the way. Whoever said the world's biggest MMO RuneScape should remove the wilderness and free trade? They threw a literal fortune down the drain just because they didn't understand their own product. There's no more Wildy and you can't trade with other players now? There wasn't. For a time, the Wildy became a kinda hostile NPC zone. While trading was limited to equal value, give or take a token amount. Over time the restrictions have been removed back to good old days, but the damage was done. Damage is too far gone. So many hours chopping wood, man. Let's invade Russia must somewhere up the list. Twice. Except for Genghis Khan. He came from the east. Cheater. Now you see me sequel not being called Now You Don't. Or man. I've been saying this for ages. Maybe the worst business decision ever made was by Xerox with their Alto computer. Xerox invented the graphical interface modern computers use. Desktop, folders, copy paste, etc. They basically invented the modern computer in the 70s. But the problem was, the people in charge at the time were businessmen without any technical knowledge, so they didn't realize what they had. They did nothing with it and gave it away to universities and showed other companies. The famous story is that Steve Jobs saw this and within 5 minutes realized this was the way computers would work in the future. He copied it, because Xerox didn't patent their invention and didn't do anything with it, and the rest is history. Xerox could have been Apple or Microsoft, or both. They could have had a monopoly on the entire PC industry. Almost every company uses Windows in their offices. I think 80 or 90% of consumers uses Windows. That could have been Xerox. They had the tech maybe 10 years before anyone else. They could have been the most valuable company of all time, but they just gave it away. It wasn't stolen. It was licensed for 100,000 shares of Apple stock, pre-IPO, and led to the Lisa in 1983, a commercial flop, before the company managed to get back on its feet and make the original Macintosh a year after. Hitler. Who wants to fight a two-front war? Hitler was well aware of this, which is why he dealt with France first. In his opinion, it was always about a war in the East. Hitler didn't play Risk as a child. Everyone knows you can't hold on to Asia. 7 extra guys at the start of every round. But you can never hold on to it. It's because you have so many border territories. But if you take the territories right outside it as well, you can defend much less ground. Just start by invading Ukraine from Russia, and then, wait a minute. Brutus decided to join Cassius in murdering the dictatorial tyrant, Caesar. The reason? They suspected his intent to become a king, which then started a chain of events leading to his adopted son Caesar becoming a military dictator without equal, having all the powers of a king without being called one. When this Caesar Augustus dies, his name and title is passed on for the next 400 years, almost like you would a crown. Monarchies then returned all over Europe, in the style of Augustus Caesar, and so, the decision of Brutus to join the conspiracy in effect changed all of Western civilization for the next 1900 years to adopt the very political style he wanted to avoid. It would not be until the 1770s when America and later France would begin revolting and experimenting with democracies and republics. The first human by deciding to not live in a tree. And honestly, I'm still not entirely sold on this whole leaving the oceans thing. I still remember the day as a very young child I realized that no matter how hard I tried, I would never be able to breathe underwater and so could never, ever be a mermaid. I started to cry and told my mom it was because I could only breathe air. Every time I see posts about toddlers crying about ridiculous things, I think back to the intense, genuine heartbreak of that moment, and I get it. Well, having just watched Chernobyl, I was wondering how far down the thread I'd have to go to find Anatoly Dyatlov. Gavrilo Princip shooting Archduke Franz Ferdinand. On that day, a man acted upon his self-constructed vendetta against a non-tyrannical monarch, thinking the world would remember him as a symbol against foreign tyranny, a symbol of national sovereignty. A year later, 10 million men were dead. The war would have broke out anyway. It almost did 3 times before. Check out the Agadir crises, Morocco crises, and gunboat diplomacy in Germany. Europe was poised for war for years, and Britain wanted to take Germany down a notch for threatening Britain's superpower status. Hey, let's create a coffee machine that uses a single-use plastic cup for every cup of coffee or tea. How bad can the trash from that really be? I actually read that the creator of the K-Cup, John Sylvan, regrets inventing the pod system. Mao Zedong, pest campaign. He basically told his nation to take pots and pans to kill all the sparrows. However, the ecosystem was disturbed and the locust population skyrocketed. Seeds. He thought that planting seeds 1 meter in the ground would result in greater roots and better harvest. He also thought that putting tons of seeds in one compact area would cause a better harvest. All the seeds died, however. Around 30 million or so died from famine under his rule. Hey, look at the other nations industrializing. Let's smelt all our metal to build better infrastructure. What? It creates pig iron, which is super unstable and impure, therefore being ultimately useless? Oops, Mao. The more I read about Mao, the more baffled I am. He seems like not just an incompetent ruler, but just like a straight up stupid man. In his youth, Mao briefly worked in the library of a university and was mocked by the students there for being uneducated. He held that grudge for a hell of a long time, as he basically banned higher education when he came to power. There was a 10-year period when literally nobody in the country was allowed to enter college. Stealing John Wick's car and killing his dog. 299 total kills and counting. My girlfriend just broke up with me, so I wanna say that one. Sultan Murad IV sending the first flying man in history, Hezarfen Ahmed Salibi, flying 3 kilometers over the Bosporus in 1638, into exile instead of putting all efforts into aviation. Imagine some dude coming up with aviation in the most powerful empire of its time, and their sultan sending him into exile. Anatoly Dyatlov making sure with every step that reactor 4 at Chernobyl exploded in 1986. This person is delusional. Take him to the infirmary. Gerald Ratner talking shit about his own business. He was ousted and the firm almost collapsed before restructuring and rebranding. Henry Tandey, who supposedly spared Adolf Hitler's life during the war. The story is set on the 28th of September 1918, while Tandey was serving with the 5th Duke of Wellington's regiment, and relates that a weary German soldier wandered into Tandey's line of fire. The enemy soldier was wounded and did not even attempt to raise his own rifle. Tandey chose not to shoot. The German soldier saw him lower his rifle and nodded his thanks before wandering off. That soldier is purported to have been Adolf Hitler. This isn't a bad decision. In fact, it's an inherently noble and human decision. I get the sentiment that obviously killing Hitler would have changed history, but people can't keep posting times Hitler might have been spared as bad decision when he was a child younger man. Same as above saying the priest who saved him from drowning. Dude was 4 years old. Yes, it was a good decision to save a 4-year-old from drowning. Nokia, yes, this phone will kill you bot. Developed first smartphone way before Apple, but did not believe them to be the future. They just continued developing the old style phones. Me. When, against my better judgment, I opened a kennel to let 2 angry pit bulls out. Their owner said, "Just let them out. They won't hurt you." Next thing I remember is being flown in a medical helicopter to the hospital, where I spent over 2 months and had 18 surgeries to repair the damage those dogs did. Yep, worst single decision in history, for sure. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content, bruh. It's free and that's a great price.